volumes. It tells me that we are united in our shared belief that every child in the Commonwealth of Kentucky deserves to be safe, to be heard, and to heal. For those of you I have not yet met, my name is Natalie Pisquenza, and I'm the Chief Executive Officer of the Children's Advocacy Centers of Kentucky. I stepped into this role almost 3 months ago, and in that short time, I have learned just how extraordinary this network of professionals truly is. I've seen firsthand that multidisciplinary teams are not just part of the work, they are part of the work. Kentucky is home to 15 children's advocacy centers serving children in all 120 counties. These centers exist for a very intentional reason, so that when a child finds the courage to disclose abuse, what happens next does not add to their pain. Each CAC brings together law enforcement, child protection, forensic interviewers, medical professionals, mental health providers, educators, prosecutors, and advocates, working side by side so that a child will receive coordinated services for safety, healing, and justice. This collaboration is the foundation of Kentucky's multidisciplinary teams addressing child sexual abuse. Last year alone, more than 7,700 children walked through doors of the Children's Advocacy Center somewhere in Kentucky. 7,700 children, each arriving frightened, uncertain, and vulnerable, and each met by a compassionate, well-trained team ready to walk beside them. And that support does not end with the first visit. It continues because we understand that healing is a journey and not just a moment. Children who receive services through a CAC are more likely to receive the medical and mental health care that they need to truly recover. That outcome is not accidental. That is the model working. That's all of you working. So thank you for being here, for the work you do every day, and we are about to do here together. And now I would like to introduce first in charge. Russell Coleman is Kentucky's 52nd Attorney General, has spent most of the past 2 decades in public service. He served as the United States Attorney of the Western District of Kentucky, working as the Chief Federal Law Enforcement Officer for Kentucky's 53 western counties, stretching from Louisville to the Jackson Bridges region. General Coleman also served as the state prosecutor and as legal counsel to U.S. Senator Mitch McConnell. A former FBI special agent, he was assigned to multiple field offices and served a temporary assignment that night. He was raised in Graves, Davis, and Logan counties and earned both his undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Kentucky. He now lives in Oldham County with his wife Ashley and their 3 children. Please join me in welcoming Kentucky's Attorney General, Russell Coleman.
I take the podium with a great sense of gratitude on multiple fronts. Starting Commissioner with gratitude for the professionals at Gray that cleared I-64 to allow many of us to make our way here. So, yes, sir. That can't be showing up. Yes. Thank you, Natalie, for the kind words. Thank you all for joining us here this morning. Special thanks to Laura and members of the Kentucky Multidisciplinary Commission on Child Sexual Abuse. It is a mouthful. It sounds bureaucratic. It sounds like one of those entities in state government that are a sinecure somewhere that are gathering doves. That's not what this commission does. That's not what we ask these commissioners to do. It's to stare into the darkness. It includes my colleagues, Ramsey Gallo and Erica Paskey from the Office of the Attorney General, 2 of our advisors who have worked to come together to publish this. We're going to talk about this. This is something that matters impactfully in serving our kids. The Kentucky Model Protocol for local multidisciplinary teams, for our 15 teams across this Commonwealth in every area development district. At the end of the day, it's a long title as well, but it is a blueprint. It's a modernized blueprint for child sexual abuse cases, for mitigating the harm that these children have faced and will face. It's about collaborating. It's about tearing down silos. It's about eliminating bureaucracy where we can. And it is about minimizing secondary trauma to these young child victims when we can. It's only fitting if we're doing this, we're together during National Crime Victims' Rights Week. What better way to serve these young people than taking this substantive step. The blueprint will be used, we are here at Frankfort, of course, but the blueprint will be used in multidisciplinary teams in all 15 of our child advocacy centers, from the mountains to the Jackson Purchase. Used by many people that are here today, from law enforcement, prosecutors, social work, child advocates, pediatricians, medical professionals. What comes out of this work is life-changing. It's life-changing in ending the harm. It's life-changing in ultimately our goal of incapacitating the offenders that are harming these children. I look around the room and I pause at what I'll say next, because we have young people in the room. But here's the reality of this darkness we face. The cases that our colleagues take at our child advocacy centers, that darkness that I talk about, that is rape, that is incest, sodomy, it's human trafficking involving commercial sexual activity, it is production of CSAM, child sexual abuse material. This is the worst of the worst that we face in law enforcement. Every day, I'm great with the courageous men and women. Those that are taking an oath, law enforcement, those prosecutors, those medical professionals, those advocates who choose to stare into this darkness. Now, if there's a statistic that you take from our time today, it's a chilling one. And Natalie touched on it, but I want to footstop this for a moment. It's the fact that from July 2024 to July 2025, local teams at these 15 child advocacy centers here in the Commonwealth reviewed almost 7,800 new cases, 7,700 new cases of child sexual abuse. This is a 29% increase year over year. 29% increase from the previous year. I stand here as your Attorney General, but as a dad, this hurts my heart. As a dad, that's a lot of little boys and little girls who have faced something that they will face again and again in their dreams the rest of their lives. It's unacceptable. As the Attorney General, we're going to keep swinging, collaborating, we're going to keep tearing down those silos with these great professionals in front of me. But at these events, you learn, Commissioner, Chief, and Sheriff, you learn early on when you're standing at a podium like this. Oftentimes the people that do the real work are behind the camera, or they're seated in the audience, and I'm looking at the people that do this real work. And I want you to know how grateful I am. This isn't the first time the Commission has published this model protocol, this blueprint, but it's the first update in 5 years. This is a lot of work. The Commission members felt like we needed to add best practices as we continue to improve. This work is a moving target. We're constantly trying to look nationally, collaborating outside of the Commonwealth, which brings me outside of the Commonwealth. I see my dear friend Liliana Redcorn, who, with Ray Larson, legendary Commonwealth's attorney and colleague, she and Mr. Larson, they brought the Child Advocacy Center program here to our Commonwealth. They tried out of the Commonwealth. They saw how siloed we were. They saw the secondary trauma that we were exposing kids to by having them engage in these interviews in police stations and in emergency departments, unlike the amazing facility at the University of Kentucky. And they brought that model here. And Kentucky now, we're so used to being on the bottom of lists that we want to be at the top of in the Commonwealth. We are. I am incredibly proud as a chief law enforcement officer that Kentucky really is on the cutting edge of how we're continually trying to improve. No matter how critical the information can be in a book like this, the result of so much great effort, this just can't be a document that sits on a shelf and gathers dust. It's not going to help any victims unless it choose. I will refer you, for example, to our friends at the media, pages 16 through 19. I'm not going to summarize this. There are still kids in the ring. But what we're talking about is decisional matrices and flow charts. And if X, we do Y in terms of harm to our kids. How to do that more efficiently, effectively. How do you speed the process up? Who to call, when to call. So I would encourage members of the media and those at home to take a look at this new section, pages 16 through 19. It's horrifying in what it describes, but it also is there to speed this process to, again, mitigate harm to our kids, to ensure that there is a coordinated response in removing efficiently, effectively. We're not just introducing this today for the sake of a press conference, the sake of a press release. It's to get this in the field. This is more than a few sheets of paper. We're implementing this in trainings all across the Commonwealth. Looking forward to supporting those trainings and looking at some of those that'll be conducting those, the follow-through, how we execute this, how we report this. It's great that we talk about it and celebrate it and honor the people that invested in it. But what's important is how we execute on it, how we utilize it, far from podiums like this, on the worst days of the lives of some of these young people, again, trying to mitigate that harm. Now, my real job today, other than to hold this up and show it to the media a couple of times, my real job today is to introduce our next speaker. It's my pleasure to introduce Joelle Hurst, to ask her to come to the podium. She's the founder and nurse manager for Norton Healthcare and Norton's, and this is a mouthful, talk about impactful, Norton Children's Sexual Assault Nurse Examiner Program, the same nurse program where she leads the delivery. And that's what's so important. This is 24/7 availability. This is not banker's hours for this work. It tends to happen, of course, the most inconvenient time, the middle of the night on a holiday. And these are folks that are available 24/7 medical forensic care across Norton's vast scale in Jefferson County, 10 hospitals for pediatric and adult patients. Under her leadership, the program has advanced, again, in a coordinated, trauma-informed fashion to care for survivors of violence across this massive healthcare system. Her passion is fueled not only by dedication professionally, but her fire in the belly is fueled by loss, as you'll hear. And I'm just so grateful for her leadership and her willingness to stand here and share the poem. Sure.
Thank you, Attorney General Coleman. It's truly an honor to be here with all of you as we celebrate the release of Kentucky's revised protocol. We should all be so proud of this protocol because it is so much more than words on sheets of paper. It is a clear signal that coordinated, trauma-informed care for victims of child sexual abuse is not optional. It is the Kentucky standard. And this protocol is the standard that guides us each time we respond to a case of abuse, each time we step into a child's worst moment. And how we show up in that moment, both individually and as a team, matters. It matters more than we may realize. How we show up can shape a survivor's path to a healing, or it can deepen the harm they've already experienced. Without a trauma-informed, team-based response, there are real consequences. My family has experienced some of those consequences firsthand. Child sexual abuse has been an influencing factor over most of my life. And prior to 2019, prior to choosing to become a sexual assault nurse examiner, I personally spent more time hiding from the darkness of child sexual abuse than I did confronting it. When I was a kid growing up with the 80s, my parents, other parents, all parents, didn't commonly know about sexual grooming, which occurs when a perpetrator prepares a child with abuse by developing a special relationship with the kiddo, either a person or more now through technology, so that they can manipulate and eventually exploit them. My father was one of the pastors at a large church, and my parents had several close friends that we spent a lot of time with. And one of those close friends was a man named George. George and his wife had 2 children that were about the same age as my brother and sister. George was very well respected in the community. He worked for the government and has high-level security clearance. He was an elected member of our local school board. He was chairman of the deacons at our church, and he would frequently volunteer as a leader at youth events. The community loved George, and the church adored him. What we now know is that when George went to all my brother's baseball games and gave my brother gifts and was waiting at the airport to welcome my brother planning for my trip to visit my grandparents, he wasn't just being a good friend to my dad, he was grooming my brother. One weekend when my parents and sister and I were out of town at my sister's 5-minute competition, my brother stayed with George and his family as they often would, so they wouldn't miss his baseball tournament. That weekend, late in the night, George sexually assaulted my brother in ways that, if it occurred today, under Kentucky's laws, would qualify for felony charges of sodomy. Afterwards, my brother ran away from the house. He escaped, and he hid in bushes, running down the street, throwing from bush to bush as George pursued him, until Jason found somebody willing to open the door to a teenage boy in the middle of the night. And I will always be grateful for those people who let Jane come into their home in the middle of the night, I think it was around midnight, and used their phone to call for help. As soon as my parents learned what had happened, they reported the assault to law enforcement. But at that time, there were no multidisciplinary teams. There was no child advocacy center, no coordinated response. My brother had to tell his story over and over and over again to different people in different settings. And when his story varied even slightly, he was accused of lying. There were no sexual assault nurse examiners. He did not receive specialized medical forensic examination of what care. No evidence collection was collected, and no forensic photography was obtained. When confronted, George confessed to some of what he had done, not all of it, but some, and what he confessed to was enough for felony charges of sexual abuse to be brought against him. But the community loved George, as I mentioned earlier. As a family, we received anonymous threats, and for a while we all went to sleep in the same room with my dad's shotgun in the corner for protection. People in the church, including my dad's fellow pastors, tried to convince my parents to let this all go, sweep it under the rug. They even went so far as to offer my dad's bribes, all in spite of George confessing. Despite all of this, my parents remained staunchly firm in their stance that they would stand by my brother, and they would continue to do whatever they could to pursue justice, to try to prevent George and Louisville to do this to other children. And they refused to back down on that. And I'm so proud of how strong my parents were, especially considering that there was very little support for them. So George was convicted. He pled guilty to sexual abuse. But at his sentencing hearing, there were more people there to support him, and they testify as character witnesses than there were to support my family. Also because my parents were trying to protect my brother, and so they didn't invite me to be there. Despite George's open confession, and despite the fact that by this time many college-aged boys had called or visited my parents to tell them that he had done the same thing to them, they blamed me for it at our tradition. There were more people to support George and their worries. One of the things George's defense attorney said to the judge at the sentencing hearing was, "George is only 46 years old, and you are going to ruin the rest of his life by sending him to prison." And I can quote this word for word because it's reported on the front page of the newspaper at the time, and my parents still got a copy of that newspaper. Despite these words, George was sentenced to 5 years in prison, which at the time was a huge victory, especially considering he was only convicted for sexual abuse and not the sodomy charges that a sexual assault and intoxication would have supported. Tragically, George only served 73 days of his 5-year sentence because his government department said they needed him back. Whatever they said they needed him for was enough to get him released and to have his security clearance returned. George later left his government position to work for a government contractor where he remained until he retired. George is still alive, and he is now living in Texas. He is not listed on the sex offender registry because he was able to petition and have his name removed without arrest. Jay had just turned 15 years old when he was sexually assaulted by George. And he was the bravest and strongest 15-year-old boy I've ever known. He had started his sophomore year in high school by the time George's sentencing hearing took place. Almost immediately after the sentencing, about 2 months into that school year, my family moved to another state to start over. My parents and my sister and I cheered my brother on as he was quarterback of his football team, started jazz band trumpeter. He had the lead and played that year, senior year at the beach. I guess the sounds of things like that, and was always there. Go, Bumpy, go. I had a shirt that said that out the queen. Talks the ball games. Go, Bumpy, go. I need dad a little bit. Everything my parents and my sister and I did, our goal was to try to make sure Jason was okay. My brother was so funny, and he could always make people laugh, especially when not. He would just look at her and raise his eyebrows a little bit, and she would laugh, and he would get away with things. He always had so many friends and people who admired and respected him because he just had this way of connecting people, of making them feel heard and valued. He was really gifted at putting people at ease, and people admired and respected him because of that, because he loved people. But he never truly got help with what happened to him. He just kept it all buried and just kept filming and kept going. They married and became a pastor. He had 2 children, and he later became a missionary in Bosnia for several years. And when he returned from his time overseas, he decided to move back to the city where he had been assaulted. And he started a church for Bosnian refugees. Many of them suffered from PTSD and other effects of trauma. He touched so many lives. I know I said this a minute ago, but he just loved people so much. In Bosnia, they called him the American Bosniak man. He decided to return to school, and he received his PhD at age 45. And his dissertation was all about his time working with Bosniak refugees. And on the outside, things like that even looked like he was doing so well. But slowly he had started to unravel being back in that city. His kiddos were reaching the age that he was when he was assaulted, and he was becoming less and less okay. He finally went to counseling for the first time in April of that year. And then the next day, he collapsed and died. And he was only 46 years old. We don't see Jay's story as a tragedy. I refuse to see it that way because his life was full of love and adventure and serving God, which was the most important thing to him, and making the most of opportunities to make a difference in people's lives every single day. But I do know that there are things that could have been so much better for him, so much easier for him, and frankly, so much better for my parents, for my sister and I. When a child is sexually abused, it can cause trauma for that child and for those closest to the child. Childhood is a vulnerable time period during which the future brain is being developed by the events of today. And child sexual trauma can become the lens through which children experience the world. It can affect their future relationships, inhibit their ability to trust, and ultimately, it can affect the child's future health and well-being. Child sexual abuse is an adverse childhood experience, and research has demonstrated a correlation between experiencing child sexual abuse and many adverse health outcomes such as obesity, type 2 diabetes, asthma, autoimmune diseases, heart disease, stroke, accelerated aging, drug use, addiction, depression, PTSD, and suicidal behaviors, and even including early death. But what matters and what brings us here today is what happens when that child first intersects with one of us. There is a window of opportunity in that moment. When we provide compassionate, victim-centered, trauma-informed care, whether that happens in hospitals, through advocacy, during investigation, or within the legal process, we don't just begin to heal in the process. We can also prevent additional trauma. When each of us fulfills our role, when medical forensic care is delivered with precision, when advocates provide support and connection, when investigators and child protective services respond thoughtfully, and when prosecutors build cases with care and integrity, we create a coordinated response that supports both humility and accountability. My brother did not receive that kind of coordinated care, and if he had, I believe the outcome may have been different. But this work today that we're celebrating is not about looking back and only looking back. It's about what we choose to do moving forward as a state. When a child is abused, the entire family is affected, and that's why coordinated systems like child advocacy centers are so critical. They bring together healthcare, advocacy, child protection, law enforcement in a way that supports both the child and the family. And when we work together as a multidisciplinary team, we reduce the burden on the child and we reduce the burden on the family. We reduce repeated storytelling. We create consistency and we build trust too. Because when systems are not aligned, families like mine feel that. And when systems are aligned, families feel that too, and really does lead to the difference. My brother did not have access to a coordinating system like this. There was no protocol. There was no integration. There was no one ensuring connection to care across disciplines, and that's why this protocol matters. This protocol is more than guidance. It's about a shared commitment, a commitment that the medical voice is fully present. It's a commitment that advocacy is integrated. It's a commitment that child protection, law enforcement, and prosecution are aligned. It's a commitment that no one discipline carries this alone. It's a commitment that when a child or family intersects with one of us, they are met with a coordinated, compassionate response from all of us. 2 months after my brother died, I chose to become a sexual assault nurse examiner because I could not stand to witness the impact of child sexual abuse any longer without doing something to help. When Jay died, I couldn't stop asking myself, what can I do? And I still ask myself this every day. My team of sexual assault nurse examiners provides medical forensic exams for hundreds of children each year. And we attend multidisciplinary team case reviews as medical consultants for 7 distinct counties, where we hear the abuse stories of hundreds of each month. This darkness is heavy, and I shine my light as bright as I can. There's sometimes the darkness suffocating, and I wonder if it's enough. And maybe I look around, I see that when different people, and do you guys are wondering that too? Is my life enough? I continue to believe a single life is enough. But in Kentucky, we aren't single individual lives. We are an entire constellation. And we will continue to show up together. We will continue to communicate together. We will continue to collaborate. We will continue to trust one another's roles. And we will keep choosing to use the systems and resources that we have. We will continue to strengthen those systems together. Because this work is too big for any one of us. It's too big for anyone else. It takes all of us working together. And together, we can change trajectories for these children and their families. We can bring light into places that have been dark for far too long. There was no way to guide my parents through the process. No one just supported him or my siblings did, and that's why this matters so much to my family. And so my parents asked me to thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for caring. Thank you for standing in the gap for children and families, and thank you for continuing to make the difference in the state of Kentucky. I can't go back and change what happened to my brother, but I can and I choose every day to move forward with purpose, and I can and I do choose to stand here today with absolute confidence and tell you that what we're building together matters. Because this protocol, this revised protocol, it is more than words on paper. It is a clear signal that coordinated trauma-informed care for victims of child sexual abuse is not optional. It is the Kentucky standard. And that standard comes to life in how we show up every time we respond, every time we step into a child's worst moment. And for the children and families we serve, I tell you, it matters. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Will, for sharing your story, sharing this family story, and for sharing the darkness and the strength, and sharing exactly why you're here today. I would now like to invite to the turn for Hudson, Chief Strategy Officer in Children's Advocacy Centers of Kentucky, and the Chair of this committee, section located.
Before we move to the signing of the proclamation, I want to take just a moment. As chair of the commission, I want to say thank you to all of the commission members you see seated up here today for your dedication and work throughout this past year, particularly on this protocol. And on behalf of the commission, I would also like to thank who, while not members of the commission, have supported the development of this protocol as well as the ongoing work of the commission. And those would be Sarah Biegenhafer and Denise Durbin of the Office of the Attorney General, and Jackie Perilla, who works with me at CHC Kentucky. Appreciate it. As I read this proclamation and each person signs, I hope we carry with us the faces behind the numbers that have been shared today. The thousands of children served last year, the child being served right now somewhere in Kentucky because of this work, and every child who will need us tomorrow. They are why we are here and why this proclamation matters. Protecting children together. Commitment to the Kentucky Model Protocol for local multidisciplinary teams. Whereas, the children in our community who have experienced maltreatment deserve high quality, coordinated, trauma-informed, evidence-based services delivered by committed and well-supported professionals. And whereas, the multidisciplinary team approach allows for a coordinated response to child abuse focused on safety, justice, and healing, and creates a system of investigation and prosecution that minimizes trauma for children and their families. And whereas local multidisciplinary teams have the following goals: 1, safety and protection for child victims of abuse, and 2, accountability of the child abuse service system. And whereas local multidisciplinary teams include prosecutors, child protection workers, law enforcement officers, child advocacy center staff, medical professionals, mental health professionals, victim advocates, and education system representatives. And whereas multidisciplinary teams coordinate investigations and service delivery to maintain open lines of communication, promote transparency, foster trust, and help optimize a high-quality response while preserving and respecting the rights of children and the respective mandates of each member agency. And whereas Kentucky charges the Kentucky Multidisciplinary Commission on Child Sexual Abuse to prepare and issue a model protocol for local multidisciplinary teams regarding investigation and prosecution of child sexual abuse and the role of children's advocacy centers on multidisciplinary teams. Now, therefore, we declare full support for the Kentucky Model Protocol for local multidisciplinary teams adopted by the KMCCSA on February 10th, 2026, and urge all professionals involved in the response to reports of child sexual abuse to dedicate themselves to fulfilling their duties therein described with the benefit of the children, families, and communities of the Commonwealth. Please join me in welcoming our signatories forward. Attorney General Russell Coleman.
Doesn't
The County Attorneys Association President Joe Rock signed in advance as he was able to attend today, so you see the signature there. Commonwealth Attorneys Association President Ronnie Bowley. Kentucky State Police Commissioner Colonel Philip Burnett Jr. For the Kentucky Sheriff's Association, on behalf of President Johnny Bivens, signing today is Sheriff Mark Ward. The Kentucky Association of Chiefs of Police Executive Director, Chief Chief Glenn. I'm sorry. The Department of Community Based Services Commissioner Lisa Dennis. Children's Advocacy Centers of Kentucky Chief Executive Officer Natalie Despoinson. And now as chair of the Kentucky Multidisciplinary Commission on Child Sexual Abuse, I'm pleased to design the conference.
love you.
I think this moment deserves a celebration, so can we all So as we conclude today, we also have space for the folks here in the audience to show their support and their commitment to following this model protocol as well. On the back page in the blue table, please feel free to go over there and sign the name. These are the words, community words that you feel like you want to share along with that. Please the mic for there. Before we head and disperse for them, good morning. I'd like to know if I was entertaining any questions and comments today. Got much to put in?
There was some discussion of repeated storytelling as a sort of a note of trauma that can provide a marker shelter. What other sort of, I guess, bad practices, for lack of a better word, will this sort of address you saw the sequence?
That glory behold us to shadows more.
As the Attorney General referenced earlier, a portion of the protocol that we really expanded as more guidance around when medical care is needed and where and how to obtain that medical care. And so I think that that is what we piece that has been an improvement in this role.